Today I'm making the children's corner Lezette pattern in size 6 months. I'm combining views A and B, so I'm using the puffed sleeves from view A and the plain neckline from view B. And I start by cutting out the pieces from this lovely blue floral fabric. And that's one front piece, two back, two sleeves, two cuffs, two plackets, and one neckline facing. So the front and back pieces of this dress have pleats. And you can see these pleat lines, they're marked at the top and they go all the way down. So the pleats get pressed in all the way down, but they only get sewn to these dots. Which means I need to mark the top and bottom of the pleats as well as the dots so that I know where to end my stitches. Marking the top and bottom are easy enough. With that, I just take my scissors and right where the line is, I make a really small snip in the fabric, which creates kind of a notch. And these notches are really shallow. They don't like go past my seam allowance. So they're not going to leave a hole in the garment when it's finished. I also have to mark this one here that goes under the arm. Okay, so that's all of the top and bottom of the pleats. Now those were clipped through both layers of the fabric. With these notches here, or these dots, I really only need to mark them on one side, and that's the side that's going to be facing up when I sew it, which typically with how I sew would be the left side of the two pleats. So like this is going to pleat. I'm going to sew down through both, it would basically be through both of these layers to the dot. So I only need to mark the one. I believe it's the left side because that should be the side that's facing up when I'm working on it. With these, I'm going to mark both because I can't remember which one is supposed to be marked. So I'll just mark both of them. So to do this, I'm just going to fold up my pattern. And this is a heat erase pen, so I'm just going to use it to mark a dot right there. And then keep going along these. Normally when I do this, I would use a piece of thread and just run it through, tie a knot so that it stays in. However, that is more time consuming. Now this one is done on the fold, so I have to unfold it so that I can mark the other half. And I'm still going and marking the left one. Or the left half of each pleat. And now I just have to repeat for the back pieces. So I fold the pieces with the right sides together, matching up the notches at the top and bottom. Then pin and sew the pleat starting at the top with the notches and going down to the mark. And repeated this until all of the pleats were sewn. At the ironing board, I pressed the pleats in place all the way down. I had to be careful not to iron over the marks for the side pleats since they would disappear from the heat and they hadn't been sewn yet. Next, I sew a placket to each of the back dress pieces with the right sides together. I then sew the back pieces to the front, again right sides together at the side and shoulder seams. Then I go back to the side seams and stitch those final pleats in place, then press them so that the stitch lines are touching, creating an inverted box pleat. For the sleeves, I run a gathering thread along the hem and another around the top. Gather the sleeve hem to the size of the cuff, even the gathers out, and sew the cuff to the hem with the right sides together. Now I fold each sleeve in half and sew the underarm seam. Then gather the top of the sleeves and sew them into the armhole. I pin the neckband to the neckline, folding the excess over at each end. I then fold the facing on top so that the neckband is sandwiched between the dress and facing. Sew along the neckline, then flip the facing to the wrong side of the dress. Now I tone up the hem and press it to create a crease so that I know where it needs to be folded later. Fold the dress in half with the right sides together and sew the back seam, starting at the placket and then down to the hem. Turn the dress right sides out and then overlap the two plackets so that the right is on top of the left and sew them together down at the bottom. The last thing I do on the sewing machine is sew the buttonholes onto the right side of the back opening. And I hand sew the buttons to the opposite side. Then I fold the neckband over twice so that the raw edges are covered and whip stitch it in place. I repeat that for the sleeve cuffs. Finally, tone up and whip stitch the hem. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for another handmade happening.